I don't know if y'all have heard about this man yet, but this case is even worse than what happened to her. Now, y'all know this case, I don't know if y'all are seeing this in the United States, but this is what's happening in France right now. Remember her husband? This is Giselle Pellicot. Her husband, had like 100 men rape her. This story that's happening now, the case of the century, the trial of the century, again, like not even like months after this trial of the century, 299 children were essayed in the most horrific way by a doctor. So, okay, massive trigger warning. The only way I can comprehend this story is to literally look at it as, okay, at least they're getting caught now. At least we are seeing how bad it is. Like, I mean, whatever. I don't know. But like, the more this stuff comes out, the more that we have to stop trusting the people who let this man do this because he had an enabler. We have to stop trusting men in general. And you know what else? You know what's crazy is that I read about this story on the same day I literally met a convicted in a church. Okay? This dude. I was in a little town with my friend and we went to the church in that little town because it's pretty. And there had been there was rumors that the priest there was a story. Well, we went and walked and looked at this church. Literally, this man talked us into going into the building attached to the church where he had all these amazing artifacts. And, we were like, we don't really have time. And he's like, oh, you don't have a choice. And I was like, that sounds kind of grapey. So anyway, he takes us in here. We look at all his, there's a bunch of us and he's an old man and I could literally break this man in two. There's 3 of us. I wasn't scared, but I felt really creeped out. And then I Googled him when we got home. This is him. He went to prison for 8 years and now he's working in this church. And it's not, and apparently it's everyone in the town. I mean, anyway. So why am I talking about this? Is that what I am realizing, my rose-colored glasses around France have completely come off. I mean, I'm almost here. I've been here almost 7 years now. And, the longer I stay, the more I realize, oh, right, they have the same problems here. It just is a little bit different. And even though I do firmly believe the United States is far more violent and extreme, all that stuff is over here. But I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if someone who literally went to prison for 8 years and appealed that decision 4 times and lost every time for being would be able to work legally in a church. I'm not sure. Someone tell me. But anyway, so this case was not apparently the trial of the century. This man who has, just like Dominique, remember, Dominique had all these records. He had video footage of this man kept records too. And oh my God, y'all, this is a very hard story. I don't think I can follow this story. Following the Giselle story made me literally ill and I had to take breaks because it was causing me to get sick reading that daily. But I felt like, well, I'm in France and this means a lot to me. But so I don't know if I'll be able to cover this story. But I just want to let you know what's happening over here in the second trial of the century within 2 months of the last one. So this 73-year-old man is accused of assaulting or raping 299 children. The majority of them are former patients of his between this year and y'all. It's not just this man. It is literally the people who knew and they gave him a job. Anyway, that is why, again, this is a horrific story, but the fact is it already happened. The thing that gives me hope is the fact that not just this man, but the people who enabled him, which means they've probably enabled a lot of people, will hopefully be held accountable so that these institutions stop putting men like this who they know are into positions like this. That's my hope. Sorry, y'all, I'm gonna have to use my glasses to read this. So not only he's protected by the people who hired him and his colleagues. And you know what? The other thing, if you don't listen to the rest of The other takeaway, I'm going to tell you right now, is that it started in his family, just like Dominique Pellico. This is why, and I say this as a survivor, we need to take that more seriously. We need to stop the culture of silence around incest, because when these men are doing it to their family members, they are going to do it in the community too, usually. It started at home. It started with his family, and Dominique Pellico did as well. He did it to his daughter. He was doing it to his grandkids. Maybe he didn't do that. We don't know what he did, but he was doing stuff to them. They reported it to their parents. So it's no surprise he's doing it to total strangers if he would do it to his own family. And here's another thing that brings into current events. An FBI warning is what tipped off the French authorities that he had been consulting child abuse websites, after which he was given a suspended sentence. So another reason, I can't believe that I'm somebody who would ever be like, yay, FBI, knowing what the FBI did, the civil rights movement, and the FBI has done in a lot of things. But they're trying to get rid of, they're trying to get rid of everything, because the FBI is also, investigate some of the people who are awful. And this organization is one of the reasons why this man was caught. He was only given a suspended sentence for going on abuse websites. As they say, there was a staggering number of opportunities to stop the former surgeon from having contact with children. And those opportunities were either missed or outright rejected. And members of his own family failed to stop him. Which again, when I tell y'all, when I say this all the time, it's not just, obviously men are not the only ones who abuse and physically and sexually and all that stuff. But when I tell you that women are just as, women who center men, women who center the ego and who enables men's violence are just as dangerous as the men themselves. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Yes, they are victims of patriarchy, and a lot of it is because of trauma. I get it. I understand why women enable men. I have been enabling men for most of my life, and I have to live with the consequences of that, which is feeling awful that any of my enabling has ever put other women and other people and the community at large in danger, like it did when I dated that violent man, hid him, lied for him, literally covered for him over and over and over and over. He could have done so much harm. It's not all my fault, but he wouldn't have got away with it as long as he did if I wasn't covering for him. Granted, I was the only one that I know of that he was actively harming, but a lot of people were put in harm's way trying to help me get out. But as somebody who has been put in harm's way of men because of women who were enabling these men and not believing me, I am telling you, this is why women have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. Don't just, let's straight all the men and send them away. Oh, really? Because there's a lot of women I don't feel safe around at all either, because they haven't dealt with their trauma or unpacked patriarchy, and they are going to center men and literally put you in danger on a regular basis. You know what I'm saying? So this is something we have work to do. And this is one reason why I do my work. I want women to get on board with not enabling these men. I mean, I've never, to my knowledge, enabled a man like this, but any violence that they're doing, that I'm enabling, I am somewhat complicit in it. Even if it's me reacting out of trauma responses and all kinds of stuff, it doesn't mean that I'm innocent. In fact, one of the lawyers says that it was the family that allowed this to go on for so long. So in 2017, when he was arrested on suspicion for raping his nieces, plural, now in their 30s, as well as a 6-year-old girl and a young patient. He's been in jail since 2017 for that stuff. In 2020, he was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. After his arrest, God, these glasses are killing me, y'all. The police searched his home and found, child-sized dolls, more than 300,000. You'll know how much that is, child images and thousands of pages of meticulously compiled diaries. Just like Dominique Pellico. I swear these men are all the same. It's not worth doing unless they can brag about it and have a record of how awful it was. He logged all of the assault of his young patients over 25 years. So he denies assaulting children, arguing that his diaries merely detail his fantasies. That's his defense, is that he has all those photos and dolls and more, y'all. Wait till you hear the rest. Oh my God, I'm just getting started. Please go do something for your nervous system after you watch this video. I'm sorry, this is a really hard video. It's a really hard video to report on, but I want you to this is another, whatever. The truth will set you free, but first it'll ruin your day. And this is a very hard truth that France is having to deal with. And I hope the whole world has to deal with this too. The same way the Giselle Pellicot case hopefully impacted people outside of just France. Really starting to question and not trusting men so much and learning how to look for red flags more and all that stuff. Anyway, God, there's got to be something good coming out of this. Also wrote, I am a... So he's facing more than 100 charges and more than 150 charges of SA. Oh, God. So like 100 charges of literal children. Some of his former patients who are now adults have said they remembered the surgeon touching them under the guise of medical examination, sometimes even when their parents or other doctors were in the room. Y'all, this immediately reminded me of the Nasser case. And by the way, I had, those of you who don't know, I had Michelle, one of the lawyers who was one of the victims advocates of some of those gymnasts. I had her on a live. We had a great interview. It's on my Patreon, the full thing, but I'm hopefully going to be releasing some clips from that soon. I finally have an editor. So anyway, these conversations need to be happening because people need to be thinking about men in these spaces with girls. With vulnerable people, because it wasn't just girls. Men in spaces, having access to spaces where there's children who are vulnerable, who especially asleep. It's not. We have been in so much denial, even still, about the true violence of patriarchy. The patriarchal violence, and it starts in the home. It all started in the home. It started in his family, and that is why we need to start talking about this stuff in our family. Because look at God, it's so much damage done. Okay, sorry, I gotta just keep going. But because a huge number of his alleged victims were under the effect of anesthesia when it is claimed that the assaults took place, they had no recollections of the events and were shocked to be contacted by the police and told their names, alongside graphic descriptions of the abuse. Because again, they were all recorded. This man, just like Dominique, was so confident and took so much pleasure in doing this that he just had to write it all down. Can you imagine getting contacted by the police and hearing this? On the one hand, it's actually very liberating. As somebody who had memories later on in life of something I always knew was true, it's very liberating, and it's also devastating. So, like, knowing and not knowing are equally like a form of torture. But we'll just wait. We'll see how it impacted some of these people. He felt all powerful and liked the feeling of flirting with danger, of course. Now, y'all know how I say about be wary of these men who are addicted to adrenaline rushes. I'm not saying just because they're like a climber or something, they're going to do this. I'm just saying there's a lot of men who get off on breaking the rules of, being on the, riding the thin edge, being on the wild side, these bad boy. And even if they're presenting as if if they come from a crazy childhood, especially like Dominique Pellicot, that man thought he could just go through all of that abuse and then just not deal with it and marry a woman who loved him and who was like, loved her family, and he could just hide in her family. So I'm just saying, please do. And again, a lot of women don't even know men's background. But if you are dating a man who comes from a lot of trauma, that man better be in a lot of therapy or something. He better be dealing with that, because if he is not dealing with that, you will deal with that. Your children, if you have them, will deal with that. And if y'all don't deal with that, he's going to do something to people in the community, or he's going to self-destruct. And I say this as a survivor. Not all people who survive this kind of abuse go out and abuse, but we usually end up suicidal, self-harming, or do something really, really like violent towards ourselves to cope with this unhealed trauma. Not always. So please, please ask hard questions. Find out about the history of upbringing, the families, like really pay attention and investigate these men. And then at the same time, they could still be lying about all of it. Hey, I'm not saying this to victim blame. I'm just trying to give people stuff to think about, to empower yourself to get more information before you get into a family with a man like this. Because again, the first victims were his family. Imagine being his wife, because he had a wife. Imagine knowing all of this was happening. You were either in denial or you outright didn't believe your children or whoever. Oh, God. Some of the alleged victims said the unsettling revelations helped them make sense of unexplained symptoms of trauma that had burdened their whole life. This was my reality. For the longest time, until I started having memory, I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? Why do I keep getting stalked by older men? Why do I keep getting in these situations? Why do I keep freezing? Why do I keep being so self-destructive? Why do I have disorders for decades? Why am I doing, I didn't understand why I hated myself so much, why I was just so violent towards myself. I mean, part of it's just patriarchy and not teaching me to do that, as a woman especially. But a lot of this was rooted in this trauma of being at war within my body because it didn't belong to me, because someone taught me from an early age that this was not mine and that it belonged to everyone but me. But I didn't understand why I thought that way. So it was very validating to find this out. But for some people, this can be so devastating to find this news that they may go off the deep end finding out this news. So it's really tricky I can't imagine being the people breaking the news to these victims. The families of two men who did remember and who ended up taking their own lives. So I guess their lawyers representing their family to get justice for two of the men. So again, it was like children. Regardless of gender, this man just he didn't care. And at least two, who knows, there might be more, at least two of these people took their own life. That is on some level. A spokeswoman for one of the victims' associates or whatever said in 2020 that several alleged victims had only blurry recollections of events which they were never able to find the words to explain. The situation like this can be peaceful. And when the surgeon's case came to light, it provided them with the beginning of an explanation. And that explanation, this is why I say, for me, that explanation was so hard to face. And so it begun a long journey of my own healing and also not blaming myself for hating myself so much. You know what I mean? I don't know if y'all can relate to this. I don't talk about the details of my story yet because I'm not ready to, but I do openly talk about kind of my healing journey from it. But most of the alleged victims were people who had no memories of being and who were living ordinary lives before the police contacted them. Today, many of these people are understandably very shaken. So this has got to be very hard. This has got to be so hard. Do you want to even know? Right? Especially if but they may be living ordinary lives, but I don't know. Sometimes I don't know how much the trauma impacts people. This is a very, this kind of mind-blowing to me. Most of mine happened to me while I was asleep or faking being asleep or trying to sleep. But these people were literally passed out. So I'm curious how much, the body speaks to the brain. And, I don't know. Does somebody know about this stuff? How it would impact somebody who was completely under anesthesia? You know what I mean? We know this happens in hospitals a lot. It happens to people who are institutionalized. They have women who get pregnant, who are in a coma. I am curious how much that impacts someone's mental health when they have zero memory of it. And it's not because of blocking it out. It is literally because you were unconscious. How much does that impact you? This is a whole new what the fork to me. One of the women said when the police showed her the entry of her name in his diary, memories instantly flooded in. I had flashbacks of someone coming in my hospital room, lifting the bed sheets, and he would check everything had gone well. But then one of the lawyers said that one of their clients is traumatizing that he ever gave his trust to the medical professionals, and it's been hard to shake. He wishes he never had been told what happened. I get it, but to me, that's not necessarily the best approach. We shouldn't necessarily trust medical professionals. There's another case of a woman, this was recently. It came out on TikTok because it was in a film about a woman who had been raped by a whole room full of men while she was getting a dental procedure and under. I don't know. To me, it doesn't seem necessarily good for people to not know how dangerous some of these people are and what they did to you. I don't know. What do y'all think? This one poor victim was saying They read out what he had written about me, and I wanted to read it back to myself, but it was impossible. Can you imagine reading hardcore porn and knowing it's about you as a child? Ugh, that sentence really hit me right here when I first read it. Marie said she has seen mental health specialists for years because of issues she had with regards to men, and that doctors had wondered whether she had experienced childhood trauma. Oh, that was the same for y'all. Have any idea how many people ask, like, especially whenever I got massage or any like Reiki or any, I was always trying to find something to help me with whatever this was. And so many times out of nowhere, people who didn't even know me were like, I hope this question doesn't offend you, but like, do you have like sexual trauma? Because I'm picking up a lot of stuff down there. And I was like, no, not that I know of. Although part of me was like, I kind of feel like I do, but I don't remember anything, so I guess I don't. Very relatable quote. I have to believe that my memory protected me from that, but the police examination brought it all back to the surface. Images, sensations, memories came back to me day by day. Today I feel as if it's just happened. And isn't that the truth? You can be living your life knowing like there's something going on, but you don't know what. And I do truly believe that my memories were protecting me. And they still do, because I don't have like really explicit memories of a lot. But I started to have enough, just enough for me to finally believe. And then also another family member had memories of it witnessing it. So then I was like, oh, okay. But I kind of am glad I didn't know anything until it came up naturally, because I was so self-destructive that I probably, if I'd had memories of that, I may have actually completely gone off the deep end. So what I really feel for a lot of these people is that memories didn't come to them naturally. It didn't come in their own time. It didn't come when, like a lot of times, I don't know, I've heard that like birth trauma can bring back a lot of memories. I've heard that, like, I know a lot of parents, their childhood memories from SA as children comes back like when their kids are that age. I've heard a lot of things can trigger these memories, and not necessarily your body being like, okay, you're ready. But at the same time, I try to think that there was a good reason why I didn't remember things until the moment I started to remember things. I'm so glad I didn't know before on some level, although it may have helped me get help earlier. I don't know. But it's this catch-22. And imagine like you really not being ready for this yet. Maybe you're like in the throes of a serious addiction. Maybe you're already like suicidal, and then you hear all this. Like this, I do believe that finding out this violently and this suddenly against your will could be detrimental to some of these people. I hope they have help. I hope they have so much support. I cannot imagine what all these people are going through. She had that when she was shown a photo, everything came back to me. I remembered his icy gaze. Ugh! She wondered how these surgeons had been able to commit these alleged crimes for so long. And that's the question. The first court proceedings heard claims that several members of his family had been aware since the mid-'80s. The mid-'80s, y'all. That's like 40 years of his disturbing behavior towards children, but did not intervene. His ex-wife has denied knowing their husband and the father of their 3 children. Oh, God. Allegedly did until he was arrested. This dude was a medical professional, a lover of opera and literature. Of course he was. And he has been the pride of his middle-class family. He was a respected small-town medical practitioner for many years, which may have afforded him this significant degree of protection in the workplace. Of course it did. Of course it did. In the early 2000s, oh my God, the FBI alerts to French authorities said that he had been accessing these websites, and that resulted in a 4-month suspension sentence with no obligation to follow medical or... Oh my God. This is ridiculous. I hope all the people that did nothing also have some consequences. Prosecutors never shared this information with the medical authorities, and there were no consequences for this dude, who continued in his role as a surgeon, often operating on children and managing their aftercare. Oh, so prosecutors didn't share. Oh, okay, ACAB. Shocker. They don't care about domestic violence. They literally will protect their own. And you know what? The prosecutors who do nothing about cases like this, just like with DV, the one, like the cops who sided with Gabby, Brian instead of Gabby Petito. Of course, they ended up, that video is coming soon, by the way. Prosecutors and police who do nothing about stuff like this should check their internet. check their search history because will not convince me they're not trying to protect their own, because they are one. When a colleague who already harbored suspicions against him read about the charges against him in the local press in 2006, he urged the Regional Medical Association to take action. Oh, look, a man doing something good. Look at that. Actually protecting. Wow, love to see it. It's rare, but we love to see it. Now, again, remember, this dude didn't get in trouble till like way over 10 years later. And even his colleagues were trying to be like, hey, please. All but one doctor who abstained voted that this dude had not violated the medical code of ethics. All these doctors should be looked into. You should search their history. The hell? That he not violated code of ethics, which states that doctors must in all circumstances be trustworthy and act with integrity and devotion to duty. No sanctions were imposed. All of these doctors should be named. All of them. They should all they voted. They all voted for this. You remember how all the doctors were starting to be questioned? All the ones that were giving Dominic Pellico that medicine? All the ones that had treated Giselle and all these symptoms and never once connected any dots? Those were people who were like, okay, like we need to like seriously have doctors educated more, hold them to a higher standard. This is next level. This is so, oh God. This is what I'm telling y'all. It's not just this one man. This was a whole family, a whole town, all these doctors. And there's more. Just wait. We therefore have proof that all these colleagues knew and none of them did anything. There you go, Mr. Benoit. There were many circumstances which meant he could have been stopped. He wasn't. And the consequences are tragic. He was eventually arrested when the 6-year-old victim told her parents that he had assaulted her. By then, he was living like a recluse in a large derelict home surrounded by child-sized dolls. So after he's done abusing all these kids while they're asleep under anesthesia, and he's living his best life, retired, drinking himself to death or whatever, and he's still doing it, and he does it to one of his neighbors, and she tells on it. And that's how all this started to unfold. Okay, so let's get back to the niece's trial. Niece's lawyer said that this man sat during his 2020 trial and answers were cold and calculated. He's extremely clever but showed no empathy whatsoever. But the trial uncovered more allegations of child abuse within the family. And during that trial, he had no real reactions and looked at the floor. Hold on, you guys. Just hang on. At one point, the court was shown lurid videos of him and his doll. Everyone was watching the screen, but I was watching him, said this woman. Up to that point, he always kept his gaze down. But at that moment, he looked up, staring intently at the video. His eyes were twinkling. So during this trial, they basically have 3 lecture halls to hold all these victims. And the trial starts on this coming Monday, February 24th. It's going to last until June. So just like the Dominic Pellico trial, that thing was like 4 months or maybe 5. This is, again, trial of the century. I can't cover this for 4 months, y'all. But I'll try to give you updates when I'm in a good place to do that. Okay, I'm not sure if it's going to be public or private yet. Many lawyers believe the trial could be a moment of reckoning for authorities that failed to take Okay, so for the authority, who's that? The cops. As well as the important moments for the victims and to voice their trauma. And also, hopefully, a moment of reckoning for these doctors. So I have seen some updates. I'm going to tell you some now. There are some victims who want to publicly have this public. So I guess there's going to be a whole system set up so that the survivors who want to speak to the press versus the ones who don't, like color-coded, green for the ones who are willing to. They're actually having to do a whole lot in this town to provide space for all these victims and their lawyers. 299 people, like victim. One of the victims has already spoken out, and she said that because of what this man, this victim said that she had serious disorders after her operation, depression, medical phobia, and anorexia. So again, even if you don't remember this stuff, it still obviously impacted a lot of these people. Okay, I'm going to cover one more article that has like more details that are even more upsetting somehow. So brace yourself and then I'll be done. Okay, so buckle up, y'all. The man lived, this is Google Translate, by the way. This is a French publication. The man lived most of the time as a recluse at home in front of his computer without clothes, with a bottle of whiskey. At 66 years old and after a 36-year career as a visceral surgeon, the man is the target of complaints of the parents of a 6-year-old girl He's alleged guilty of indecent exposure and then having the young girl with fingers through a fence. God, he did this through a fence. During the search, the police discovered the extent of the horror. So thank God for this little girl reporting this, because then they did a search, and in his home they found, oh my God, y'all, 70 dolls, boys and girls, all representing children, and they're found with toys attached. God! Also found black notebook in which he had written child stories in literary form, one of which was entitled My Letter. Also found under his mattress were more than 300,000 documents of violence, according to our colleague. The surgeon then kept computer files soberly titled, in these documents were written each of his crimes. Everything is there. The date, the name, the address, the hospital where it happened, as well as the age, often minor, of his victims. And basically he did this in dozens of hospitals. He addressed the victims directly, whom he called my dear or my little. Also described the facts precisely, sometimes ending with the I love. By the way, y'all, they don't call them files here. Like in general, they are calling them criminals because of the translation. They don't want anyone to associate this with loving children. So they anyway, my French teacher taught that. So they actually are, I don't know if it's mainstream. They refer to as criminals now. Okay, oh my God, this is one of his journals. While smoking my morning cigarette, I thought about the fact that I'm an exhibitionist, a voyeurist, a sadist, a masochist, I don't even know what that word means. I can't read all this, and I'm very happy about it, it says in one note. He also reveals that one of his first crimes in the family circle, his great niece often came on, oh God. Again, one of his first crimes was his great niece. His notebooks also bring into question another one. Did his wife know? She denies knowing about the actions, but the man wrote in one of the notebooks, she knows, without saying more. A cataclysm. At that time, he erased about 10 years of crimes from the notebook. So I don't know what that means. This is probably a weird translation. In 2004, the surgeon's name was found by the FBI. Okay, we already know that. Because he had used his bank card on a Russian site based in the U.S. While his wife left him the same year, he was sentenced to 4 months in prison, suspended without obligation to seek treatment. I didn't see that prison thing earlier. I don't know if they left that out or if it was a weird translation. However, he continued to practice. Okay, just like that priest, 8 years in prison for being a criminal. This man also in prison for 4 months. And both of them get to work. God, not only work, but work in an area explicitly with children or just like where there are children. Finally, he was sentenced in 2020 to 15 years in prison for on his nieces, his little neighbor, and a patient. That's before they found out about these 299. So 15 years already for family members, the neighbor through a fence, and another patient. There are 300 victims, 60 lawyers, and it took 2 years of preparation and 3 million euros. And it's the trial of the year. Yeah, just like there's going to be like a trial of the year 5 times a year. I don't know if this is like a bad translation, but he wants and needs to express himself, overwhelmed by criminality for 30 years. He assures that he does not remember the attacks. Of course he does. They all seem to just not have a memory, although he wrote about all of it. I don't know if this is like not translated well. This is so annoying. During his first trial, the psychiatric expert examined him and said he was a predatory pervert who suffers from no psychiatric pathology and developed a horn deviance from the mid-80s at the age of 35. But he had a total lack of compassion. So I don't know. You know what? We'll probably hear in this trial what he went through in his childhood. All the poor things he endured. Just like Dominic Pellico. Doesn't mean those things didn't happen. Doesn't mean that I empathize with the child version of him. But I swear to God, when men like this don't... At 35 is when he started to do this? I don't know, whatever. So this Department Council Order of Physicians, this is I think the ones that we were talking about before, declared itself incompetent to prosecute him before the disciplinary court. The pretext was that it could only prosecute a hospital doctor for acts that were separate from his public hospital function. But how could one think that possession of child was linked to his function as a surgeon? But then others are like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I don't know, y'all. I'm sorry. This one group says, we consider it unacceptable that this group of doctors does not express regret or public apologies for their irresponsible passivity for these years of silence, which have serious consequences for the victim. Thus, we do not tolerate it that it dares to become a civil party in this affair when its responsibility is engaged. Basically, they're like, y'all are responsible. If I'm reading that right, they're like, don't you dare say you're not responsible. You literally enabled this to happen. I do think that, I hope that the people who enable men like this or people like this absolutely start facing more consequences, especially an association like this. They took an oath. They took an oath to protect patients. And then they literally voted to let this man continue. They should be held accountable. So when they talk about this 6-year-old victim, this was her neighbor. This man did it to his neighbor through the fence that separated their gardens. Luckily, thank God, this little girl told her parents. They went to the police. A search was done. And that's when they found all this. I'm sorry, y'all. I think I'm done. I had some more stuff to share, but I think we've had enough today. Anyway, I am so sorry to take you on that journey through a horrifying story. But the Pellico case is actually starting to have some repercussions here. They've considered some new legislation, especially about chemical submission. It's made a lot of, not just in France, but in the U.S., made a lot of women pay more attention and start to really, a lot of us have been in denial. You know, I started coming out of my denial a while ago, but there's more there. And I hope that this case, as horrifying as it is, it already happened. This stuff already happened. We're just finding out about it. But I do hope that stuff like cases like this will at least hold institutions accountable, will create a less incentive for people to stay silent and complicit, and make people feel like the burden on themselves to keep other people safe. Maybe victims will believe more. Maybe there'll be more restriction. All I know is the fact that there is a priest currently working at a church I visited this week with 8 years. Like, I don't know why the people who literally have been prosecuted for this can just go right back as if nothing happened. I don't know why they do that here. I don't know. I don't know what in comparison to the U.S. how the laws are. All I do know, and I firmly believe, that the only way that people are going to realize how serious this problem, especially West, because that's where it started. It just evolved to more because he kept getting away with that. If we start to deal with the root of the problem, this patriarchal violence is that starts in the home, and this awakening, this reckoning, it is long, it is painful, and it does not produce results or any progress for a while usually. This stage is always hard. I've been in it for a while. It's another level, and I do believe at the very least it will at least help people to stop trusting certain people and institutions as freely, stop giving as many benefits of the doubt, and at least help people to protect themselves more. I don't know. What do y'all think? I'm so sorry I've traumatized you with this story. And I'm not going to cover this as much as the Giselle Croft trial, but I will try to give you updates. I don't even know if they're talking about it in the U.S. Are they? Have y'all heard about this? Anyway, I know not all of y'all are in the U.S., by the way, but like a big, I don't know, 70% maybe are. So let me know if you've heard this in any other countries outside of, the BBC is obviously in England. If you've heard about this outside of Europe. And I'm trying to do a fun comment song. Let's palate cleanser. Seems really inappropriate, but I think it's needed. And please join my Patreon to help support my work so I can continue to cover hard stories and maybe not so traumatizing stories too. Anyway, this message and my work is brought to you by Patreon. Thank you, Patreon people. You are what is keeping me going right now, especially. And thanks everyone for commenting, liking, sharing, subbing, all those things. Those all help too. And voila, I guess. God. This is my sick comment song. I'm kind of sick today. That's cauliflower. This is my sick comment song. We had lunch yesterday. Some sort of meat I don't understand. Moe's lays on people's feet when we're eating meals. We also had this cake and then also all these cakes. It's too much. It's just too much, y'all. But look at the inside of this French cake. They don't do birthday cakes over here. Playing with Barbies and all that stuff because my niece likes it now. Then we went on a walk around
and saw the pony and old stuff and old stuff. This is the comet song that's random. If you're new here, I do this all the time. Random stuff comet song. Tap, 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 tap. Mo's on a hike. Mo's asleep. Mo's asleep. I hope you feel better after a hard video. Thanks for being here. I hope I feel better to do a video tomorrow. Bye. And follow my Patreon. We had a great watch party last night. Et voilà.